Hello. How is
Good
everyone?
evening.
Hi guys.
Dude, you do the best opening sequences.
Yeah, they're epic.
I love that.
Yeah, really good.
I saw that as I was looking in the basement down in the basements where we're waiting for people to come up on panel. By the way, everybody, I saw the Rice smile when you saw the alien winning cartoon up in the middle of the intro there. So that was it was worth doing it just for that, Jamie. You know.
Loved it.
Okay, rather. So tonight, right now, Dulce, the battle of the base at Dulce. We already know where we're at before we even start this. I think it's we'll go through the motions.
Okay, we'll tell the story.
We'll tell the story, and I'm sure we'll do a fairly reasonable job of doing so. So, as usual, myself, obviously, Dave Darius lives. We've got Jamie from A Brief History of Mystery, and Stevie there from Stranger Times, and absent without leave, absconding from duty, is Damien, also from Brief History of Mystery. Enjoy the football if that's what you're watching, sir. And thanks to everybody for joining us. As I said, tonight we're going to be discussing a battle between humanity, and alien beings in an underground base in New Mexico, allegedly. This is a contentious one. Anyway, but 1979, a military base at Dulce, New Mexico. It's a site where an alleged battle took place underground between US military personnel and subterranean alien beings, really. And apparently over 60 soldiers and civilian scientists and engineers, geologists.
He said 66.
66, yeah. Were killed.
Snyder, that is.
When a firefight erupted between them and Delta Force and US Navy SEALs on one side, and 7-foot grey aliens on the other. So I suppose like the hello, and thank you for joining, by the way. One of the first places we'll go with the base, Dulce, the base. What do we know about the base?
Not a great deal. As far as the thing, we don't even know 100% that it exists. So, but we know that Philip Schneider claims that he was an engineer on one of these bases, that he built many of these bases. There's 190 something he claims are in the United States.
Yes.
And that it was during the construction of this base, during the initial boreholes, that they came in contact with one of these greys. There's a bit of argument, isn't there, about whether the base was actually built sort of for the aliens, or whether it was being built and kind of hit the aliens by accident.
Okay.
It seems to be some debate on that.
I'll put up a couple of pictures, aerial shots of what the base is like. So I'd like. Jamie said a moment ago, for obvious reasons, we don't really know a great deal about the base, or whether it even exists in the context of which we've been led to believe. Okie dokie. So obviously, an aerial shot of the base there with buildings that are unknown. Reasons for why they're there. We don't know what them buildings do in specific, so to speak. It's located on the Colorado-New Mexico border. It's Dulce is a small town, population just under 3,000 people, I believe, and it's the tribal headquarters of the and you have to excuse me for the pronunciation, the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. It's in the notes.
That bit.
Yeah,
I don't do well with these pronunciations.
I'm not sure I pulled it off. And it's an alleged underground research facility at Archuleta Mesa, which is supposedly a jointly operated base between alien beings and US military personnel. However, go back to something Jamie said a second ago before we continue to rip it apart, discuss it. We know where we're going with it. It's a construction that's part of a program known as DUMB, apparently DUMB, or Deep Underground Military Bases, depending on what you listen to. And as Jamie said, according to Phil Schneider, there's a system of bases that span the continental United States, and there's over 100 of them interconnected with subterranean tunnels. But how many did you say this? You said there was
190 something, 192 he claims that are within the United States, but 1,400 worldwide.
Oh, so that's got a fair few.
Which probably actually isn't far from the truth. We know the Americans love an underground base because you can protect from nuclear weapons. You know, we know Cheyenne Mountain and so on and so on. They do have significant underground bases. This number of 192, if you included sort of nuclear silos, which are like mini underground bases, is probably conservative. Right, many more than that, to be honest. A lot of them are turned into like little hotels and things nowadays. It's quite a popular thing to do.
Yeah.
Also, a few bits here. It's a 7-story facility, by all accounts. There's a few people that I've talked about. We'll cover them in a little bit. Obviously, you've got Phil Schneider, Paul Benowitz, and what's his name? I've forgotten his name, guys. Yes, of course. John. Yeah, and then Thomas Costello is the other guy. Yeah, Thomas Costello. Brain just kicked into gear for a second there. Anyway, there's the run short about how the base came about or why the base came into being, and whether a massive amount of the excavation was done because of a nuclear explosion in 1967. I'm not sure whether I'm aware of that, but I don't claim to be any kind of expert. But it was built deliberately as a research facility. When the U.S. military elements and the U.S. government were attempting to stimulate subterranean gas reservoirs and encountered cave-dwelling aliens.
Yeah, I read the same thing. I don't quite know what that means. What does stimulate gas reservoirs mean? They would go down there and give them a tickle. What were they doing?
How do you stimulate that gas?
I didn't quite understand that. Just go down there and light matches and see. First one to explode. Yeah, I stimulated the crap out of that gas bucket.
You found the gas because you exploded.
Yeah, you exploded. You win. I don't quite understand that one, but yeah.
Any of you guys in the side chat there who's watching who know how to stimulate gas, not produce gas, we can all do that, but how to stimulate underground, especially to bring them out like subterranean aliens, then please let us know because we'd be interested in that. Well, a few other little bits about it. Okay, yeah. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say that's where the first ever case of cattle mutilations was as well, wasn't it? Within the area of
yes, it was.
Yeah, we have to talk about Gabe Valdez, don't we?
Yeah, 1979, I think it was.
Yeah, by I do have his name. I do.
Cattle mutilations actually go back way further than 1979. But this is one of the most modern, first modern ones. Yeah.
Are you referring to the cattle mutilation found by Gabe Valdez, the state trooper?
That's the one. Yeah.
A couple of more bits about the base, as much as we can sort of figure out. As I said, like cave-dwelling aliens. Now, rumors say that it goes 2 miles into the ground, 7 stories, with an increase in military presence the deeper down into the ground that you go. Apparently, so the deeper down in the levels you go, the higher the significance and the importance of each of those levels, and the higher the military presence on each of those levels subsequently as a result of that. And each floor is allegedly for a different area for specific research. If you kind of imagine the type of thing that you saw on Independence Day, really, when they went down underground and they had all different layers and that kind of thing. And anything from like mind control on humans to sort of like genetic experiments are supposedly be going on there. That like resulting in human alien hybrids that are being kept at this base and other bases allegedly as well around the world. And the 6th floor is infamous. It's known as the Nightmare Hall. Apparently, the 6th floor of Dulce base. Tongue cheeky with this one, guys, but the Nightmare Hall because it's the most terrifying of all. And it
filled with the screams of the human victims. Apparently,
I just love that. filled with the screams of human
It's like Doncaster on a weekend.
being experimented upon, and it echoes throughout the corridors. So that just sounds great. And human beings, it just sounds great. Might not be the correct type of terminology to use in this instance. And human beings are. I'll show you. We'll have a couple of pictures up of things like this because it's Mystery Machine, as I've alluded to before. That's kind of the way we roll. So let's rock some. Let's give you some imagery.
While you're doing that, just quickly, isn't 2 miles deep really far?
Yes.
For a mine.
Yeah, absolutely. On top of which, when you think of the actual depth of 2 miles, you would sort of like think that 7 floors isn't a lot. I mean, how high is the ceiling on each floor? You know?
We've got some mines that go down to about that deep, and
we do.
Humans really struggle with that depth because of the pressure and things. So I mean, it just seemed very deep to me. Phil Schneider also said that he had some mining equipment that could drill down 2 miles in a day.
Yes, he did.
He didn't have his notes, so I was wondering whether he might have made a mistake with that, because 2 miles in a day is impossible.
It's a long, long way.
Not with modern normal drilling technology, anyway.
2 miles. You wouldn't want to like dig it with a spade, that's for sure.
No.
You wouldn't want to dig it with a spade. So you got human beings screaming, as Jamie eloquently put. I sort of like dived in on the back of that a little bit because there's people screaming all over the place. And human specimens are kept. I think just look at the picture there on the screen, guys. While you're not doing anything, are kept in liquid-filled capsules where the Greys experiment with human DNA. So that kind of thing goes on at this base. Again, you know, it kind of in line with what you're seeing on Independence Day. Is it life imitating art? Is it art imitating life? All that kind of thing going on. That's what we ought to find out.
That's a different debate, though, isn't it? But we can all talk about the media and the way the media has been influencing us for the last 50 years regarding the alien.
Yes.
Phenomenon.
Even the X-Files have done bits like this as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Beyond the shadow of a doubt. Yeah. 100% o'clock. I mean, it'd be very remiss of the X-Files not to do something on this. The more outlandish, the better the episode.
Yeah.
And you sort of see that in real life as well, don't you? Though, really, I mean, it's, without imitating life, I suppose it does come back to that. Is the more grandiose the story you tell, the more interesting it is, and the more infamous it becomes. You know, reality can sometimes be a little bit more boring than that, unfortunately, people. But we'll get there with that one. So Dulce, the base. Anybody want to add anything to the base side of things? Then please feel free to do so.
No, I think the construction is interesting. The way you just talk about, other than how quickly they seem to be able to dig these mines out.
Yeah,
he does talk in quite a lot of detail about how they're created, drilling down 4 shafts that you then build off the interconnected rooms. He does use the right sort of terminology because I checked. So in the way that these rooms are then built and blasted, and like I said, the terminology he uses for the connecting shafts and things. So he at very least seems to know something about the way they're supposed to be constructed, but he does make a few sort of like quite glaring errors, like how quickly they seem to be able to drill these holes, which isn't possible. Not using existing technology, and he never said anything about that they were using anything other than sort of normal technology. So bore holes, drill holes, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't talk about using alien technology or anything. So, I do question that.
Doesn't he also say that that when Bill's building the boreholes for that particular base, that the aliens had been there for about 400 or 500 years already before?
Yeah. So we talked about, isn't it, when they drilled the holes down, they got this stench, didn't they, that came back up, and this that smelled like rotten garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, he called them the stinky aliens, didn't he, when he actually came into contact with one, which surprised him, which made him draw his little Einen Pistolen, and started to have this shootout with these 7 foot like rather angry aliens. That obviously decided to shoot back. So, Jamie, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we can pretty much call it off. This is the end of the cast. Thanks, everybody. It was Phil Schneider. He started the war. It's all his fault.
It was Phil Schneider in the hall with the Wolfer PPK.
There you go.
And if he then says that a conflict has been running ever since, if it has been, he started it.
He is the reason.
He did. Yeah.
Completely started it.
He is the reason. Yeah. You start to go look at it a little bit like Franz Ferdinand kind of assassination started off the First World War. Well, Phil Schneider started off this load of shenanigans. So there you go. There we go. Did everybody enjoy that? Okay, well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate that. We hope you... No, I'm only joking. So the base, he was going down a shaft. I'll rephrase that. He was going down a mine shaft. He was a geologist, and apparently geologists always walk around armed.
Yeah,
that was going to be my other question. Why was he packing a Wolfer PPK?
Why was this guy packing James Bond's like throwback?
Yeah.
Anyway,
not a particularly good weapon, by the way. It jams like crazy. It's small and compact. It's got no stopping power at all.
No.
It's not a particularly good pistol.
Do you think it would be powerful enough to take out 2 7-foot aliens that have the ability to do what they did to him? Supposedly,
well, it is a 9mm, so short range. It'll do some harm.
A 9mm parabellum round is infamous for not being able to stop anything really. It is a very weak pistol round. But as Jamie said, for very short range, very low amount of foot poundage and muzzle velocity. It'd have much been better off.
There's no muzzle velocity to it at all, and that's what you need for stopping power.
Speed kills, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'd have been much better off with a 50 cal Desert Eagle or something like that. 4.54 Pursuit or something. But he went down there with a 9mm, and he wonders why. What happened?
I assume though he wasn't expecting to come across aliens, even though when we talk about it later, I don't see why he didn't, because apparently he's been in touch with aliens had something to do with aliens his whole life.
Oh yeah, his dad's had a massive career, didn't he?
Well, let's not jump the gun. Let's move on to that in terms. So let's have a look.
I assume the PPK wasn't for aliens, so I assume it was for rats or something. I don't know. I don't know what he was packing for. But basically, as soon as he saw the alien, he got a good whiff of it, and then blew it away. You see,
rats are sort of like infamous for hanging around sewers and things like that. You don't really find rats just living willy-nilly 2 miles underground in the surface strata, or So I know what you're saying, and really, there is no reason whatsoever for him to have a pistol with him if he's a geologist and engineer. Really,
I would have thought shooting a weapon underground where there's gas deposits and potentially landmines was actually a really bad idea. But
pretty bad idea, yeah, absolutely. But there you go. There you go. So good old Phil. We haven't got time to present Phil's own testimonials, Amy. We just briefly covering the subject. We haven't got time to go into all that rubbish he spouts.
I'll send you the link for it later, Amy, because it is interesting watching.
Yeah. Okay, so Phil, what do we know about the I suppose in a way the main guy regarding the subject? Of course, there is others and loads of offshoots go on about even stories into MK Ultra and things like that. But staying on topic, Phil Schneider. What do we know about our Phil?
I didn't actually look a lot into his history, I have to admit. I looked into more what he'd spoken about and the things he talks about. So his political ideology and things are interesting to me.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Obviously, there's what he says, that he was an engineer and everything, but actually finding out, some people do question whether he was even an engineer. But yeah, go on, Dave. You obviously have looked into that a bit more.
Okay, well, he was a civil engineer who who says he was involved in secret military projects and deep underground, which fits in with the story of what we're discussing.
Yeah, luckily.
Well, luckily, and he's as Steve was saying, his dad was involved with the development of the early atomic bomb and various other things.
Was he there?
Yes, was he though?
We can back that up. Okay.
And if you actually look into what Otto Schneider done, no, you don't find out that whether he was even remotely involved in any of it at all. I mean, I think he did serve in the Navy. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's as far as you get.
I've read somewhere that he did some autopsy reports on some of the Philadelphia experiment soldiers.
Okay.
When that came back, and quite a few other sort of black projects as well, from what I could sort of find out. So yeah, apparently it was quite a very, very sort of well-to-do officer in the Navy. So yeah,
there would have been a certain amount of level of trust for him to be involved in them anyway, wouldn't there? Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Phil does protect the. While we're talking about his dad, project that image of his dad with Valiant Thor.
Yeah.
The alien.
Yes.
To be fair, Jamie, Phil himself looks a little bit like Valiant Thor on one or two of the videos. He sort of rocks that kind of image.
I was thinking that earlier. I was. Yeah.
But yeah, this Valiant Thor's supposedly an alien that's been with the US government since about 1937, 50 years or something.
Yeah.
Worked with Phil's dad. So this was one of those things we go through this a few times, but this was one of those occasions where Phil Schneider has had contact, or at least he has talked about that aliens have been a part of his life.
Yeah.
Forever. He even says he actually met this Valiant Thor, this alien. Doesn't go into any details about how. Looks up to him though. He talks about him with reverence. You know, how he speaks 100 languages, really smart, an IQ of like 1200, and he goes on and on and on. But then there is a bit about how Valiant Thor never shakes hands.
Yeah,
because of the bacteria that would kill a human being instantly. And Phil does have a theory that AIDS and Ebola and things like this might have actually come from harvesting or weaponizing that alien bacteria. I'm not 100% certain Phil understands how bacteria works. Because actually just shaking his hand, that would spread anyway if that was true. But Phil wants to have all of the aliens put into an internment camp, doesn't he? Because in case they spread viruses. I'm not going to say the C word because I'm not allowed to say the C word, but maybe C word came from.
Maybe it's not a massive far stretch to sort of like look at it as like an inverted version of what happened in War of the Worlds, though, which is known about for many decades. They were killed by human bacteria, bacteria on Earth. So, had he watched that,
just reversed it. That's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Now he was. He said he was made to sign official secrets documentation. I think any of the what we're called so-called whistleblowers say that. I mean, that's a matter of course, a par for the course, as they're signing official secrets documents, which they then obviously renege upon the agreement by talking about their experiences. But that's the very nature of the beast, I suppose. And then he later went on to reveal that American military was working with the alien race of Greys, building joint subterranean bases. So within making that comment, that's pretty much saying that they already knew the aliens were down there, if you like.
Yeah.
Or at least suggests the knowledge of that. So he does that. Does that describe why he was armed? Or were they sort of expecting it? I don't know.
Right. So I'm just breaking my computer.
No, you're fine. He later became a lecturer on the Dulce base, which we know about. That's why we heard of the guy and we see the videos and stuff. Black projects, government cover-ups, and basically the UFO phenomena in general. And he became an outspoken advocate for the government to be more transparent about their knowledge of alien species and the UFO phenomena. He was very vocal about that in the short time, if you like, that he was in the public eye doing these lectures. He, some people say that he got into doing what he done, and publicly speaking, because his friend died. It was a guy called Ron Rummel.
Yeah,
Ron Rummel.
Yeah.
And he was the publisher of a periodical called the Alien Digest. And the sort of circumstances surrounding it, it's interesting to say the least, that he shot himself, but the detectives on the scene didn't find blood that should have been in areas that it should have been had he shot himself in the mouth. None of it on the gun and various other places. And Schneider believed that his mate had been murdered, so his friend, I beg your pardon for our American people, and that this made him want to be in the public eye regarding it. Now, Phil himself, I feel like I can call him Phil.
Yeah.
We're not going to go out. You know what I'm like, but I feel like I can call him Phil. He had a few problems himself regarding health. Whether this is relevant or not, I'm going to list them anyway. He had chronic lower back pain, osteoporosis, and multiple sclerosis. And every now and then it would be bad enough for him to use crutches, body braces, leg braces. He would have a bladder bag on, catheter, and sometimes be in a wheelchair. Now, 2 fingers were missing from his left hand when we go into what happened in the alleged battle. And there was a scar that ran from the top of his throat to below his belly button, and another scar that ran from his ribs from side to side, which I think will be the next picture along.
No, yeah, I've seen this image.
This image does it. It might be further on. I'll find that one. So he's not in the best of health. There's nothing to suggest that his mental health was called into question, really, other than his claims. If you don't believe what he says, these are saying here. Now,
that looks like heart transplant.
It does, doesn't it? It does look like heart surgery. Yeah,
it does. Didn't he say though that around about 20 to 22 of his friends were so-called murdered because
suicided?
Yeah.
The list is quite distinguished, isn't it? If you listen to him, actually, that's a good point, Steve.
He says there are at least 11 attempts on his life as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
At least 11.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, the people trying to actually do this are rubbish at it. They can't suicide a guy that's got osteoporosis and he's a wheelchair half his life. I mean, the attempts on Bob Lazar's life were lazy, if true.
That is true, yeah.
Maybe they do it to not to actually try to kill them, but just to scare them. Do you know what I mean? To think.
Shut up.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
No.
Steve, he meant you, Steve. You shut up.
No, but you know what I mean. It's yeah.
No, I know what you mean. A scared person is better than a murdered person in some ways, because murder's messy. If you do it wrong, it's really messy, particularly if they're in the public eye as well.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, I suppose, in making people a martyr.
Yeah. So that's the argument I say for why you wouldn't kill Bob Lazar. He was too public, and you just make him. All us conspiracy nuts would shout foul. When Bob Lazar has a heart attack and dies, we'll all think he's been murdered, even if he's 98.
Did these two, did Bob Lazar and Phil Schneider ever like chat together or sort of do anything together?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Some of their stories cross over, though. Phil Schneider talks about S4 at Groom Lake and things like that. So there was some crossover with the stories.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, we'll bring that picture back up in a little while for reasons that will become known to the general public.
This way
okay, so we move on to what happened that day. What happened on the day in question, the day of the battle?
It was a lovely sunny day.
It was a beautiful breeze. Yeah. It was a beautiful breeze. The skylarks were singing.
They got skylarks in New Mexico? We're going off topic, but do they? I don't know. The vultures were singing.
Vultures, yeah.
Yeah, the vultures.
They were singing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was not an extraordinary, was it? So Phil was going down one of the tunnels that he'd been bored in, one of those crates sort of thing. So it's like an elevator going down. Did he say he smelt him first?
Yeah,
if I remember right, and then he basically just turned around and he was just suddenly face to face with a 7-foot grey. He talks about how it was very cramped conditions, isn't it? And he struggled to pull his PPK and load it, so it wasn't even loaded. So this guy's really useless with firearms. But anyway, pulled and actually killed 2 greys. He doesn't go into much detail about it in the interviews I've seen. I don't know if you guys have seen more, but he just says, "I killed 2."
Yeah, if you had done, you'd want to not talk about it more, but give a little bit more detail about the actual aliens, and if they bled, if they made a noise when they fell, if they did fall. Do you know what I mean?
They smell it.
Like it did a little bit, didn't he? I mean, he said he was confronted, as you said, by this 7-foot alien grey, and that was like forced to draw his sidearm and open fire, and he killed 2 of them before he was hit with a plasma weapon, and that they were firing like a kind of lightning bolt from the chests.
Yeah.
During this confrontation, he said his suspicions were first aroused with the presence of Green Berets being at the excavation site. Yeah. Which would raise my suspicions as well, to be fair to Phil Schneider. That would get me interested. And he said that well, he got away, but the military called in special forces, and they were there like fairly quickly. The SEALs and Delta Force and stuff.
He actually says a Green Beret saved his life, doesn't he? He was
The
alien sort of waved his arm, and this blue plasma thing hit him, took his fingers, burned his thing. Did he say he burned his toenails off?
Yeah,
burned his foot off, sort of thing. His shoe came flying off. The Green Beret grabbed him and threw him out of the way, but the Green Beret did lose his life. Doesn't actually say how the Green Beret lost his life, from what I've seen. But but he thanked the Green Beret that he saved his life, and then he went back up the thing. He says he was forced to pull his weapon, but he doesn't actually say why. He just says he was defending himself, and he says repeatedly, "I was defending myself." But the way he talks about it, he doesn't actually mention or discuss how the Grey was attacking him or went for him in any way, or it just seems that he came down in a crate, was face to face with this alien, and pulled his weapon.
Yeah.
So I got flies flying about.
Nah, they're all over me.
Yeah,
that confuses me. The lack of detail there confuses me.
I get that, unless it was some kind of mind force or something like that was projecting in his mind, maybe. I don't know.
Or Phil Schneider got scared and pulled his weapon.
If you're going to go through something like that, then that's the kind of thing that's going to be etched on your mind. Now, with my own life experiences and what's gone on, and what I've experienced in my life, and been in anything that's been what you would remotely call trauma. I'm not going to go into details, obviously, but what might be considered to be traumatic to regular people on the street and stuff like that. You remember those events, unless there's some kind of trauma to you which prevents you from remembering those events. You remember those events in minute detail. To the extent where they will haunt you. All the little things. More often than not, time stands still. You become, everything becomes enhanced. Your hearing, your vision, everything becomes enhanced. It's like time slows down, and the smallest details you pick up on, and they're etched into your brain. They're etched into your memory. So I think you did raise a good point there, Steve. I mean, certain things like the response when they were fired upon. There's no details about how he actually managed to. He doesn't go into a great deal of depth regarding leaving the base, or how he got out of there, and as Jamie said, how he knew that the Green Beret lost his life exactly, just like he did. And if he weren't there to see that, how would he know that unless he heard that retrospectively, so on and so forth? So there's a lot of things that don't make sense with his story, at least on first first scanning, for sure.
interesting.
He also says that he doesn't go into a great deal of detail about. He says, "I'm in the crate thing.
Yeah.
I'm going down." He doesn't
Yeah.
actually say. So does he? Is he like on the way down, and the alien is like in a side room? Does it? They reach the bottom, and they're in it. There's no detail about where or what actually happened. He says he's face to face with one, and then apparently there are three, and and so on. But there's no depth to the story that if you're actually telling a story, you would go through normally and tell us this is important details, and he skips them. Or doesn't go into any detail. So it does seem strange. He discussed his injury. Sorry, go on, Steve.
I was just going to say, has his stories wavered over time in any sort of way, or anything like that, his accounts or anything that we know?
Not that I've seen.
He didn't do a great deal of he's 96 he died, I believe, wasn't it? 1996.
Yeah.
1996 he died. And he wasn't in the public eye doing these lectures
2 years, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, for about 2 years. So one would argue that his story didn't have time to change. Because he wasn't around long enough for it to change. One could also argue that his story didn't change because he was telling the truth.
Well, there's no detail to the story as well, I would argue, so there's not that much to change.
Yeah, you don't have this. That's a very good point, very valid. But his life was saved, and he was maimed during this confrontation. Like I say, the electrical bolts being fired from the chests of these 7-foot grey aliens. And of course, the plasma weapon that was fired, that it sheared off 2 of his fingers, I believe, on his left hand.
Yeah.
Sheared off 2 of his fingers on his left hand and made a mess of one of his legs, his toes, or one of his feet. And the battle continued after he left, by all accounts. And as you said earlier, Jamie, it continues to this day. It's still raging underground, but between these subterranean aliens and mankind. And what he was saying, or what he's led to, and of the other people as well. When we move on to other witnesses or other people that might have something to add to the story, I've alluded to the fact that it was a very real event and something that did indeed happen. Now, is this kind of thing happening around the world? We'll also go into that in a little bit. So, anything else I want to add to what happened that particular day? I mean, he is remiss on a lot of details. I mean, if you see his videos are on the internet for people to see, and you can, it's convoluted in the way that it's delivered. You can fill in the gaps yourself so it fits or suits a certain narrative, and defend what he's saying in a way. I know people that do that, and that can be done, but there's not a lot of detail in it, really. He will jump from one particular element to another particular element, which coincides with other elements within ufology, rather than standing on its own in many cases. So,
no, I agree with that, definitely.
Read into that what you will. Other witnesses who can corroborate and validate what Phil says. Now, there is 1 or 2 people that have got stories from that same time, isn't there? Now you've got Benowitz, haven't you, who claims that it's all about the government trying to mind control him.
Yeah, well, he was the one that first came out and started talking about that there was this base at Dulce, wasn't he? Dulce. He was detecting radio signals from an alien spacecraft that were being aimed at the Earth, and I've got it written down somewhere. Notes everywhere. He said in 1979 he was in Albuquerque, and he said these signals were being targeted somewhere just outside Albuquerque, but he wasn't sure where. By the early 1980s, he became convinced that it was this Dulce base. And in 1988, he wrote a paper, Project Beta, which described how to infiltrate the base so that we could go and actually find out. He didn't do it, apparently. But he wrote that paper. And then obviously we're going into John Lear, but Paul Benowitz seemed like an interesting character. He never seemed to. I don't know about you guys. Have you ever actually seen any evidence though that he actually captured any of these radio signals? He didn't. I've never seen anything that actually show that he recorded any of this stuff. Actual physical evidence.
Not that I've seen.
I've seen none.
I think his biggest claim for being on this or being in the public eye is that he's claiming that he has information that makes the government nervous, and that enough is enough to make him dangerous. Yet, you know, a little bit remiss upon.
Because I'm saying if he's recorded or if he's detected radio signals, and for one, I don't know why aliens are using radio signals. Maybe that's because we've got radio. I don't know, but he's detected radio signals that are being focused towards the Earth, towards bases on the Earth. Why didn't he record them? Why hasn't he got evidence to back that up?
Good point.
You know what I mean? I would have thought that'd be quite simple. You record it, wouldn't you?
He also claims that he was lumbered with a government operative called Richard Dulce.
Yes.
Richard Dulce, and his task basically was to feed Benowitz false stories about alien bases in New Mexico. Anyway, so so Richard Dulce was there to stoke or provide the embers that led to the fire of his interest in the first place. One could argue.
That's another Bob Lazar link. Doty comes up in the Bob Lazar story a few times.
He actually does, yeah. But when you look into what the claims that Benowitz said, as opposed to Schneider, a lot of why it's been propagated in modern ufology is down to Benowitz as opposed to Schneider. Like you said before, he's pretty much the guy for it, isn't he? Really.
He seems to be the guy that said that there was a base there initially. I mean, Schneider didn't come out until a decade later.
Yeah, he was pretty much a full decade later. Yeah. But his claims that the government would try to drive him insane. The government are trying to drive him insane, and did they do a good job of it?
And we know, to be honest, with MK Ultra and everything else, and actually the government were quite good at that.
Yeah.
Using, different hallucinogenics and things.
Yeah,
that, You know, the government don't like to kill, genuinely to kill people that are a problem. They like to discredit them if possible. And which is again my argument with Bob Lazar. People say, well, if he knew all this stuff, why is he still alive? And I says because they knew they could discredit him and they could make him look stupid. And that's by far the easiest way. That's why sometimes accusations of interest in children or something else horrible will suddenly appear to discredit somebody. And once you discredit someone's character in that way, all of a sudden, as humans, we start questioning everything they've said. You know, it's by far an easy way of dealing with somebody that's a problem than murder.
I think another way that is almost like a brother in arms with Phil Schneider is wanting to uncover all the black projects that the US government were involved in. He was another candidate for bringing that to the fore and disclosure on all these secrets of the black world kind of thing that have been going on. Is Mr. Benowitz on top of Phil Schneider's claims? So you got one who's doing it because allegedly his friend was killed or rather committed suicide, i.e., killed in suspicious circumstances, and another one who was doing it because the US government was trying to drive him crazy. Now he was in cahoots with, like I said, involuntarily with Dulce. Dulce also with William Moore, who was an author in the UFO field. Something in Roswell, I believe he got books on Roswell. So the Roswell link comes in. You've also got to bear in mind that after Roswell, this location is the next one on for the UFO, like a UFO tourist town almost now.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
They have a conference annually, don't they? They have the Dulce Base conference annually. The town really does promote this story, and it's a big part of their economy. The senator really pushes for it quite a lot and things, and the local mayor is brilliant. But I mean, they have a conference annually. They have a lot of tourism.
Yeah,
All
the locals.
some of the news reports. They have news reports every so often, and like people, they interview people from the town, and there's little old nannies and stuff. They look like my gran being interviewed, talking about how they've seen UFOs several times, and they talk a lot about cattle mutilations.
Yeah, and Bigfoot as well.
Bigfoot, yeah. They think Bigfoot was created here, don't they? That was one of the stories. They think Bigfoot was created there and it escaped.
Yeah.
He was one of the experiments. But a lot of people see a lot of strange things around this base, around this area, and have done for a long time.
Which brings me on to, Gabe. I suppose we should talk about Gabe. Yeah, Gabe Valdez. Let's bring up a picture of Gabe Valdez. Let's discuss Gabe for a short while. He himself has also had experiences in that particular region. Okay, so let's have a look at my notes. Okay, so state trooper. Now this is in 1975, so years before the battle, 4 years before the battle. That he came across a mutilated cattle carcass in a field outside of Dulce. Put you all at rest in the side chat. Dulce, yeah.
I was saying
we invented the language. We'll say it how we like. Valdez.
Surely it's Spanish, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, just joke. We invented that too. Valdez said he discovered a fetus inside the cattle that he described as looking like a human, a monkey, and a frog, and it didn't have any bones in the head, and it was all full of water. And he said what he saw looked like an incubation chamber for a cloned creature, much like the experiments alleged to have taken place deep below ground, I suppose, in the Dulce base. And after he discovered the carcass, Valdez said that he sort of found listening devices in his home. Started to find that his house was bugged, and he started to see more. Well, he started to see UFOs. And he says that there's 4 underground bases, or claimed there were 4 underground bases there, which are inactive. They're inactive now, apparently. But he doesn't believe that there were alien beings there, because he thinks that the UFOs that he was seeing weren't extraterrestrial, but advanced stealth technology that, like, including silent big black helicopters and stuff like that.
The silent black helicopters are a big one.
Yeah. And this is what the military are researching at those bases, but they can't disclose that information for reasons that are unknown to the general public. But we all know why. They like to keep us in the dark. So Gabe came across a mutilated cattle with this thing inside it years before the battle fought. So what do you think about that?
There was a story as well about Gabe. He with another officer, they did actually see a black helicopter in the area. It was on the ground, and it had 2 or 3 men around it, and they approached the helicopter and said, sort of like, "What are you doing?" And apparently they were forcibly. I mean, you remember these are police officers, and they were active at the time. They were forcibly removed from the area, and this helicopter just flew off and disappeared, sort of thing. But there was a few quite strange encounters that Gabe sort of talked about after the around this time. And he was the one that kicked off the cattle mutilation story for the next 20 years, really. 10,000 cases plus in America along the 37th parallel, the UFO highway in America, and massive amounts in Canada. The FBI investigated this for several years and came back with inconclusive reports. It seemed to be that whenever anybody would go in and start sort of investigating one area, the mutilations would move.
Yeah.
So they started investigating New Mexico, they moved to Canada. They started investigating Canada, they moved back to New Mexico. And it seemed to be that these cattle mutilations moved around.
Yeah.
There's so many cases of cattle mutilation that are truly bizarre, that are properly documented as well. I know, like most people say, it's just natural phenomenon. They just die, and it's predators and things. But lots of cases are reported that don't make sense in that respect.
Yeah.
That the animal is alive one day, and then it's found with no blood half, dead and mutilated the next day. That's not predators and wildlife. Flies will eat blood. They don't do it they won't drain an animal of its blood overnight. They just don't. It takes days to desiccate an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and they won't just like filter every single drop of blood out of it. The muscle tissues, the epidermal parts of the animal first, the exposed parts of the animal like the eyelids, the any kind of cavities, the mouth, the nostrils,
lips, tongue, soft areas.
Yeah.
That's what predators will go for. I do think a lot of human mutilation cases we see probably are predators. I've seen when the lips and stuff have been removed, and people go, "Oh, that's not almost laser precision." And I'm like, it's not that. That is what a predator would go for. And the other thing is they're saying they say laser cuts where it's the incisions are so perfect, and there were studies done say that actually when an animal dies, it basically inflates because of the the internal gases and things, and then basically the dry skins and tightens, and then as the thing that it'll just split, and it will split really cleanly. And so I do think a lot of animal mutilations, even though they look bizarre, are natural. But there are a lot of cases that aren't. There are a lot of cases that are bizarre.
You still raise a good point, though. I mean, if there are videos out there, should you feel so inclined to look about the decomposition of bodies in nature. There's even studies conducted where human bodies are left in fields and at different decompositional rates. And checked. I forget where this field is. Is this in Sweden or is it in the States? I forget.
Summit Farm, they call it, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They literally just have loads of dead bodies in different situations, different scenarios, don't they?
Spread around a field or something. It's bizarre, but there are videos out there where you can see decomposition in the wild, where obviously various insects and predators that eat away in the speed. It's time-lapse photography, but you can see the manner in which they do it and how they strip the body. And when you do, or when you are aware of that, you will see where Jamie's going, what he's saying, and how almost precise that it can be. So yeah, Gabe, that's our Gabe. I feel like we can call him that.
Gabe. And obviously his son wrote a book a couple of years after Gabe Valdez died, which
yes, he did.
Which really talked about all this thing. Like I said, that Gabe didn't believe it was extraterrestrials. That's really is quite important. He believed that this was a government operation, which is again very believable. And we know that the American government has done much worse than they've admitted. Like nuclear testing on its own soldiers and
absolutely, and you just got to look at what they've done in the Melanesian islands in the Pacific and how much they cared about the residents, shall we say? But that is to say that he didn't believe the UFOs that he was seeing were due to extraterrestrials. Okay, the next one is Tom Costello. Now, our Tom here. He was an interesting guy. So Tom Costello was a senior security technician. And while he didn't really exactly confirm what Phil Schneider said about what went on, it's very similar. He sort of spoke of several armed confrontations between base personnel, military base personnel, and alien beings. It didn't just happen on this one particular event that Phil Schneider was involved in, allegedly. It happened over several occasions, and it's also happened around the world. The Russians, there's supposed to have been an equivalent of this in Russia, and the name of that particular one eludes me at the moment. But it allegedly did go on. And as Steve said before, with alien beings, these confrontations, there have been several of them with alien beings that have lived underground for hundreds of years, as Steve said before, several hundreds of years. And he said that he witnessed this project. He knew about this project of this giant base and being in New Mexico. And he knew that local missing people from the area were being subjected to experiments by these greys that were underground. And he said that it was well known about the rising tension and paranoia between the humans and the aliens that were supposed to be working on this joint facility. And both sort of sides had an idea that it would culminate in an escalation of hostilities and end up being a violent confrontation. So it didn't come as a massive surprise. But he claimed there were thousands of aliens working in this base underground. Thousands of aliens. I think he might have called them a battalion of these aliens. Working on that. Technically speaking, a battalion isn't thousands, but we won't go into that. But thousands of these aliens working underground. There isn't a great deal about it, but we did talk about. I do want to talk about this just for a sec. Is one of the weapons that we use there, which is called a flash gun. So I'll get rid of this picture and I'll put these flash guns up. And of course, you know, we're dealing with the believability and the tongue-in-cheek sort of aspect. But I will just put this up just for a sec. So these are artists' impressions of these flash guns, and I'll talk about these flash guns. If you'll humour me for it. So these flash guns, is that up on screen?
Yeah.
Okie dokie, we're rocking. So these flash guns, it's allegedly an advanced beam weapon that can operate on 3 different phases. So phase 1, like Star Trek, can stun and maybe kill. If the person has a weak heart or underlying health issues, then you got to be careful about how you use the stun. Okay. On phase 2, it can levitate anything, no matter what it weighs. Okay, no matter what it weighs at all. Phase 3, it can do the business. There we go.
Disintegration. Well, that's a torch.
It clearly is a torch.
Is that supposed to be the phase gun?
Yeah, it's an artist's interpretation of it.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just get a torch?
Yeah, just stick a couple of blobs of bits on it to look like other buttons or something. Phase 3 is the serious business mode now, apparently. So phase 3 is the serious one, because it can be used to paralyze anything that lives: animal, human, alien, and vegetable. I don't know why you'd want to paralyze a vegetable.
Tastes nicer.
You can paralyze vegetable. I'm going to have to start using that on my broccoli. On the
that's a little internal joke between us.
we all know what that means.
Fantastic.
If you know, you know.
That sounds so rude, though.
I'm gonna use a flash gun on the old broccoli. On the higher position in the same mode. So when it's on phase 3, like I said, it can paralyze things. But when it's on the higher position of phase 3, it can create temporary death.
Okay.
And the strongest.
So, like Jesus, temporary death.
I can only assume.
Okay.
That's what it means. The strongest position will vaporize anything that lives, and that mode is so powerful it will leave no trace of what it vaporized. Apparently, along with this flash gun, Costello also went into details about the security of the complex, and these devices built into each light fixture and cameras that can stun and render people unconscious and emit a silent frequency impulses of EMF that drop them. And there's cameras and video cameras, still image cameras, eye print, like handprint recognition, weight monitors, lasers, extreme low frequency generators, like I said, the impulse equipment, heat sensors, motion detectors, and loads of other things to stop people getting on the base. So according to him, the reason that nobody else sees any of this stuff is you just can't get in there.
Which actually is probably quite accurate. I mean, the security measures are, and well, we know they use lots of non-lethal weapon systems like EMF and sound pulse weapons, microwave weapons, and so on. And I think we've moved on from lasers, and it's probably more like some sort of proton weapon or something. But but we know they use these weapons because, particularly if you're trying to defend a large area, something like an EMF weapon or an ultra low sound weapon system, something that disables rather than kill, is actually quite useful because you can put it over quite a large area. So no, I completely believe that all of that technology that he mentioned there, or most of it, that technology he mentioned there, is actual reality. Yeah. But its best defense is being hidden.
Yeah,
that's these bases' best defense. You can walk over these bases and never know they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Tom hasn't finished with us yet. He wasn't around long before he disappeared after telling this story, but his description of some of the beings that were around, we may as well go into that because we're here now, aren't we? So of the races on the base, he claims that a lot of them were reptiloids. Okay, Dracos, a Draco-Orion or Orion alliance. Now, the normal reptiloids are beige or green, and Dracos are usually white-skinned, and they're the ones that are in control. I believe that what we're looking at now is a Draco on the screen. And the Draconian leaders are very formal when talking to the human race, according to our mate Tommy Boy. And they're ancient beings, and they consider us to be a lower race, going off what I've wrote down here. And he remembers speaking to a particular one called Karsh. And Karsh called him Leader Costello, because they hold people in certain high regards. But when he was referring to Costello, he was doing it in a sarcastic way, because they've got that kind of manner with them, apparently, because they think humans are below them. But the workers, apparently, the worker caste, if you like, is supposed to be much more friendlier, as long as you let them speak before you do. And they will answer you if you talk to them, however, but if you let them speak first, they're generally a relatively benign and pleasant race.
I love little cultural details like that. I love that.
Yeah, when they pick up on all this kind of stuff, it's that's massively important. And they're very cautious beings, Jamie. And they consider most humans to be hostile. So we are. So, yeah. Well, yeah. We won't segue too much into that one because it is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they always seem surprised when they find any human being that's trustworthy. So do I. You know, I'm not a draconian elder or whatever, but I agree with that. And we also made an interesting claim. Get on this, guys. This sounds like something that's a little bit out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the way that the name sounds. But he had an interesting claim that one of the Draconian leaders was named Karshfasht. And that name means keeper of the laws. So keep saying that without. So imagine somebody with a lisp saying that, which means keeper of the laws. And Costello claims that they receive the names when they reach the age of awareness, is what it says in the notes. Time is not a factor in this as it is for humans. And when they reach a certain age, they are aware of the station and the position that they're supposed to fulfill. And they are either allow or choose somebody to give them a name. And this name will include their position and several personally chosen letters that have meaning to them. And since this Karsh, his name means keeper of the laws, because it includes Kash, which allegedly means memory or keep, which is the base word for Akashic record, and Fasht, which means law base word fast or bind. That's where his name comes from. The reptilians that are on the base, before we throw it to these two maniacs on here with me, the reptilians choose to be not only private but secretive of where they come from, allegedly, according to Thomas Costello, because to them, birth and life in general is one of the most sacred rights. They don't need to tell us human beings about that. And he pretty much disappeared about a year or so after telling this story. So I don't know, what do you think about our Thomas there, guys?
I've seen his stories a few times before, because I mean, a lot of what we think we know about the Draconians and the Reptilians comes from his stories and from others similar. The Draconians, the Reptilians, not to be mixed up, even though a lot of the features seem very similar. He has a softer version of the Draconians than other versions of this incredibly violent species.
Yeah.
Other than the torch, which would be a hell of a useful system, by the way, and also something that's repeated in lots of other stories, isn't it? I mean, we talk about ancient aliens. They talk about a device you know, we see a lot like cone-shaped devices and things that supposedly can levitate objects, going back to ancient Egypt and beyond. So I mean, whether that's where we got it from, or whether
sort of
it's
truth in there, yeah.
true, you know.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
His story holds more water for me, because it's not too extreme. Again, can we confirm that he actually did work for the government? That he actually did do some of the things that he did actually say he did, or is this just basically his word? I know it's very hard to verify these things. I tried to verify anything that Bill Schneider said about his career today, and I couldn't.
I keep cutting out.
Yeah.
Yep. So
yeah, that was the issue with it. There isn't.
We're losing Dave to the live stream. We'll give you a second, Dave, to come back.
Have you got me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
They're on to us. That's what it is.
Okay, there you go. You got me back, yeah?
Yeah, we got you. So,
okay,
is
cool.
this a lot like we're going to talk about the 1954 Eisenhower Pact that was supposedly agreed between Eisenhower and a couple of these species? A pact that's been broken repeatedly because we keep fighting them, apparently. I mean, I know Schneider talks about that there's at least 11 species involved in this. 2 of them are malevolent. 9 of them basically consider us food.
If there was a massive underground war going on with the alien races and things like that, surely they'd have brought it to the surface by now, and we surely wouldn't be here, or we'd be slaves to the alien races.
Well, I can see from that the alien race is hiding, basically. I mean, the Draconians, supposedly the reptilians rule us, according to David Icke and his supporters, and the Queen is the reptilian stuff was just blows my mind, but we won't get into that tonight. But they, like Dave says, they seem to look down on us, but at the same time, they seem to want to hide from us. That might be because we've got superior numbers. So there's there's nearly 8 billion of us, isn't there? We're doing it like rabbits. So maybe that is the thing, that they are literally hiding from us because we've got superior numbers, but supposedly they have superior technologies. So it seems to me that, but it does seem that Phil talks about some of these races basically feeding off our blood and cow blood. He doesn't say it's like feeding, he says it like they absorb it, which sounds a little bit different. But he does talk about adrenochrome at one point, which is supposedly a byproduct of the adrenal gland. This feeds into the more recent Pizzagate scandal and things like this. But he was talking about that it's like cocaine to these aliens, that they take this adrenochrome and so that they're here for an agenda, though. They're here. They had this agreement with Eisenhower back in '54 that basically they would exchange certain technologies in exchange for free access, basically, and human help to get access to children and humans for experimentation, but also this adrenochrome that they really, really like. Phil Schneider, he does talk about there being 100,000 children missing. That's not verifiable. There is not 100,000 children missing in the USA. I tell you what, I was in America a few years ago, and we stopped at a truck stop. I don't know if I told you this story before. We stopped at a truck stop, and you could park all the way around it. In the middle, there's like a toilet block, and on the 4 walls, on each wall, there's like missing person posters. And I swear to God, it was full of missing person posters, hundreds of them. Honestly, I was taking photos of it, so just I've never seen anything like that in my life.
That's
we don't have that in this country. It's just you wouldn't. A lot of people do go missing in America. And that is scary. But I think he's 100,000. I think he's exaggerating the numbers there again.
Do you think, just a wild sort of theory, that something like the missing 411, because that's mainly around mountains and the same sort of areas as where the Dulce base is, that it could have something to do with that, possibly, with because the residents that live nearby have said about the Bigfoot and seeing the UFOs and things like that. Maybe.
To me, it seems like the same story, really, just a slightly different angle on it.
Yeah,
Different perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, all these dumb bases are supposedly in quite wild rural areas, which would make sense, wouldn't it? You can't really dig out a massive base next to large populations of people because they'd notice.
Yeah,
they would have an inkling that something was going on for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
Schneider seems to exaggerate a few numbers, though. To me, there's a few stories. He talks at one point about a satellite system that uses an infrared camera that's got 99.999999967. 61 is it?
That's a very precise percentage, isn't it?
But he talks about this satellite being in a geosynchronous orbit 150,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. That's further than the moon.
Yeah, that's a long way off.
So, but I will give him that he says in that video that when he talks about that, he doesn't have his notes, and maybe he's just he's obviously spitballing a little bit. So he might just be throwing numbers out, but he seems to exaggerate numbers quite a lot to ridiculous level, sort of thing. Yeah. A satellite at 150,000 miles out would, even with the best camera in the world, would barely be able to see a continent, never mind have resolution where it can read your number plate or something. And why would you need it that far out? Why would it be there?
Yeah, what would its purpose be? Yeah,
it doesn't really make any sense. But like I said, he might have just got the number wrong. He might have meant 150 miles for all we know, didn't he? He could have just got that wrong. But he also, do you see some of the materials he also talks about?
Yeah.
And the stealth. The one being, he talks about element 123, Mironite.
Yeah.
He doesn't go into any detail.
He doesn't have to.
No,
it's
good enough. And he takes a piece of metal and throws it, and he goes, ting-ling! And he goes there. And everybody goes, ooh. I'm like, it's just metal. Don't touch it. So the thing is, you can look.
Moonanite.
But then he does talk about that this is then built into lots of stealth technology, and he really does seem to know quite a lot about some technologies. Particularly, remember this is early 90s. He's talking a lot about the F-117. He's talking about radar absorbent materials, which wasn't really in the public domain at that point, but it's true. That's what these materials do.
Yeah,
a technician did allegedly escape from this battle with all the blueprints and all relative information that led to stealth technology being developed, if you believe some of the people that perpetuate the myth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stealth technology would go back to the Nazis. Really.
Oh, yeah, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, modern stealth technology, as we would know it, I suppose,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's down to the shape, but I mean, a lot of the materials they do use are pretty exotic, and they have this radar absorbent. But a lot of it just come down to the shape, and they said they basically did it by accident. They were shooting radar images at one aircraft, and they thought, I can't remember what it was now. They said it was they thought the radar was broken, and then a bird landed on it, on the model, and all of a sudden they could see it.
And you could see it because of the bird being on there, yeah.
And they went, oh. And then the myth is that stealth was born, sort of thing. But
that's cool.
But it's just one of these things that it can tolerate temperatures up to 7,500 Fahrenheit. Again, forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's actually not that high, is it? Compared to what some metals like titanium and stuff can.
It's not. No, it's not actually. No, there's some big boys out there. I do want to say though, as far as the stealth goes, they could have made it more stealthy if they wouldn't have painted it black. Yeah.
Well, that comes down to the pilots, isn't it? That the pilots, apparently, when they had the F-117, they were a bit unsure about it because they looked at it thinking, yeah, I'm going to die. So they went, how about if we paint it black? So they thought it was a bit cooler. And they went, yeah, okay. So the fans quite liked it black.
Listening to Rolling Stones that afternoon, that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Get
But I
out of
look,
the
if that
office.
story's true, that's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Apparently, that was one of the reasons why they painted black, to try to make the pilots like it a bit more.
That is absolutely brilliant.
Americans.
I also
But,
hope that is true.
Got to love
yeah,
it.
I hope it's true. It's one of those things, isn't it? But
I'll be back in
Now,
a second.
look at that right at the bottom of the screen there, going across the bottom. That'll give everybody an
alien
indication of where we
bases
go.
around the world.
Alien bases around the world.
I'll just say straight away, it's completely true. America has got bases all over the world. They're very open about. It's one of the reasons why they took over Diego Garcia, was because there was parts of India they couldn't bomb, so they wanted a base in the Indian Ocean.
Well, it's not a massive secret in any way that they planted them all over Europe when it was part of, especially during the Cold War. The UK, who did. You've just got to look at Arif, Bentwaters, and Woodbridge, and various other places, and the things surrounding them. Check the channel, done a video on that. But the type of things that happened around that, so they've got them all over the place, haven't they? Yeah, you know it is. Because it's easier to get to Berlin there to stop the oncoming Russian advance. That's what they were thinking.
The one general said Britain was the greatest unsinkable aircraft carrier that they could ask for.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for that one. We raise a glass to you, sir.
We're going to get bombed the crap out of, but you were an unsinkable aircraft carrier.
Yeah, as long as you lot are okay, that's all that matters.
Yeah. But yeah, they've got 800 something bases around the world. The Americans. Yeah. There is literally nowhere on Earth that you can be that they couldn't bomb you if they wanted to.
Yeah, they can reach every single part of the Earth in some way, manner, shape, or form, whether it's with ballistic missiles or aircraft.
We also know a lot more about secret bases that they've got around, black sites that they've got around the world as well, that we've had some evidence sort of snuck out in the last few years, particularly following 9/11. They had illegal black sites where they would hold, it completely legally hold people for enhanced interrogation techniques and torture. Romania there's quite a large one in Romania and other places. So it's not even the bases that they admit. They probably have several. And again, we're talking about underground bases. We know they exist. It's not fantasy. It's not a conspiracy theory. We know they do.
Yeah.
There's several in Britain.
Oh yeah, I've guarded some of them.
There you go. And we know, and some of them are massive. You've seen the ones in London where Churchill was going to go run and hide. It's like they're huge facilities, and those are just the ones we've seen that we know about, sort of thing.
Yeah, so, you got Menwith Hill up the road here.
Yeah, Menwith Hill. There you go. The giant golf balls of nosiness.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, that and the RAF Islandales as well.
Yeah.
It's just a tiny little triangle place, and that's it. Nothing else, and it's all underground.
That's vast underground. Yeah,
you've got to be careful. Them small little triangular places, they can get you in a lot of trouble, Steve.
I know, especially
with
sheep.
Oh, of course, these bases. I mean, these bases, shared bases, US bases, all over the world. Some of them more secretive than others. But as the lovely banner scrolling across the bottom of that, alien bases. Now, it don't necessarily have to be shared, guys. Now we know there's reports of that there is like I forget that one that's in Russia. I should know this, but there's one in Russia. Are they just keeping up with the Joneses when they make these claims because they don't want to feel left out? You've got to wonder that if the Americans have got one, we want one too, Comradsky. Are they doing that kind of thing?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Very possible. I would have thought that. I've been researching a lot about USOs recently. Checked my video out last week. It makes sense to me that there would be alien bases under oceans.
Yeah.
We're not out there for one. There's no witnesses, whatever. If they did want to hide, even though I don't think they'd give a crap. But actually, I just think it just makes sense for their technology. They wouldn't be bothered. But it does seem to me that stories about reptilian type aliens or something like that coming up out of the ground has been in our history for eternity. I mean, Native American tales, that's where they think some of their ancestors, where they actually came from, was that their ancestors came up from I forget the name. I'm going to forget the name of the tribe, but they believe their creation myth comes from basically a reptilian type of alien came up from the Grand Canyon, and that's spawned their civilization, sort of thing. So I mean, these stories go on forever. You know, they've been in our mythology forever. And is that because it's exciting? Is it because it's like vampires sort of thing? Would it it taps into something in our psyche, or is it because it's true?
Yeah, is it because it's exotic, romantic, and you know, yeah, that's all.
If it was just a story, it's been going a long time.
That's what I mean.
But just to be a story.
Some stories
so is the Bible.
They don't know, but
yeah, true. Yeah.
So is the Bible.
Yeah.
But also, you look at how many times we've built civilizations underground. You look at Kuyu, other things like this. But it seems like about 10,000 years ago, humanity was obsessed with building civilizations underground. They've recently found another set of caves in Brazil. Apparently, caves that go on for miles and miles underground that were constructed about 10,000 years ago. We were obsessed. There's a massive one in Romania. There's, you know,
definitely went on, didn't it?
Something really catastrophic happened 10,000 years ago that we were hiding from. But anyway, but I was going to say, there was some sort of alien connection and we were copying them. We thought it was whatever it was. We thought it was a really good idea for a bit. And these bases exist everywhere, so
yeah, that's a fair comment. It'll bring us nicely on to the possibility of alien. Of course, I'm not just referring to the 1979 battle underground at the base, but this particular facility. That aliens are at war. I mean, that as well, being at the base in New Mexico, but aliens being at war with mankind in any kind of format, way, shape, or form whatsoever. Thoughts, guys?
Doesn't make sense. If they're at war with mankind, they're not very good at it.
Yeah, it would be gone by now.
They might be at war with our government. They might be at war with a government with an agenda that they don't agree with, but they don't necessarily want that conflict to spill out. Or they're not aliens. That's the other thing. The draconians, whatever, could be here, could have existed here longer than we have. We could be the aliens as far as they're concerned. They might not necessarily have advanced technologies. The conflict could not.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that they're an indigenous subterranean population that we've only become aware of recently, and they've lived here all the time. So they're not technically aliens; they're subterranean, natural species of this planet.
Possible. And the conflict isn't close because maybe they aren't as technologically advanced as you would imagine. Maybe their numbers aren't very big. Maybe they don't have large, they're not in the billions, which would make sense if they live underground, I suppose. So maybe that conflict is real, but it is quite limited. It's just what I'm thinking as well. It's why we, like Steve said earlier, why hasn't it spilled out? Why aren't we openly aware of it?
Yeah, especially and if they were just not just the reptilians, but other alien species as well. Even if they was at war with our government, surely you would think that they would get so disgruntled with our government for being so stupid and ridiculous that they would just come out and go, look, guys, like to the human population, we're here. Your government is completely and utterly stupid. This is what's been going on. But it's
just had a little thought as well. I don't want to go too off topic with this, but I generally think that a lot of our religion is based on, at the very least, nuggets of truth that have then been adapted and changed. And I do think religion is a brilliant control mechanism. But it does seem that there seems to be inspiration for things. If a lot of what we're talking about is true, and there are these underground civilizations and people. Could that be where the myth of hell comes from?
Mm.
It's just a thought, but I mean, a lot of these things seem to be inspired by something.
Now, so can you look at these these aliens or species or creatures or whatever they are underground being looked at as being hell or demons or whatever? That the ones that are then from the heavens, that we're seeing these aliens that are then from the heavens coming to try and sort things out, if you like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. That is heaven. That is where we're from. That is where God or the Creator or the reason for it all is from. Because there is, this isn't going to come as a massive surprise to you two guys, and probably not to the people in the side chat there. It does get bounded about in the UFO community that there is an ongoing conflict in the galaxy between different races of aliens. There's a confederation which want to preserve humanity, and they sort of see us as little seedlings that are just starting out in the journey of technology, life, understanding, and spirituality. And then there are others, what you might call shysters, who want to sort of like piss on our parade and want to try to take over the universe, and they're after resources and various other things. And there is this conflict that we're unaware of, but it does take place out there beyond what we can see. Now, did this propagate the idea of what we see when it came to the actual SDI program? It was nothing to do with intercontinental ballistic missiles at all, and all these satellites were actually pointing outwards rather than inwards to destroy these intercontinental ballistic missiles. So there's a lot of theories around that. So what's the possibility, just to play devil's advocate here, that this conflict is going on, and the reason that we're not seeing it firsthand here and it isn't directly affecting us is because we are being safeguarded by other races that are preventing it from having a direct effect on us and us seeing it firsthand. It is out there, I admit, but I'm not the only person. I'm not saying that I think that, because I don't, but it does go about in the UFO community.
Yeah, it does.
It's one of those things that's kind of logical, though. There is potentially logic to it. We maybe don't believe it because our minds are quite terrestrial. It's easy for us to believe what we see, but actually, if we reverted that to our own way of thinking, so if you're thinking about, instead of different species, think about different countries, we have always, look at the Cold War. We had little proxy wars where we would basically start little conflicts between people. We would have protectorates, places where we protect and say, right, you don't touch that, and if you do, we're going to war. We have treaties and things like that with species, which is one of the things they talk about, the Galactic Federation, don't they? Where there's the Palladians and all this, there's a treaty in place. All of a sudden, if you think about it like that, and if you can sort of like take our own political agendas and the way we have acted out when we've had these little Cold Wars and things like this, but put it on a galactic scale, it's kind of logical that you could understand that might happen.
You've just got to look back in our history. I'm sorry, Jamie. You've just got to look back in our history. Alexander the Great had satrapies where they would independently look after, but they would be under control. There would be satellites of his government, of his rule, but they would do their own thing. Alexander was still going off fighting battles on their behalf, even if he never saw them again in many details. He didn't. Genghis Khan, you had the Mongol hordes, would do the same thing. They would allow people to rule. They would allow them to self-determination and to do what they wanted without intervening or getting in the way in any way, shape or form. But ultimately, they were the people in control, if you like. And I think just because the way that we look at it on our planet, the way that we see it, we don't see direct involvement as the members of the public, if you like. I don't like to use any kind of terminology, and that is a sweeping statement to make. But just because we see it doesn't mean it isn't going on. Like absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence kind of thing, or the other way around. Just because we're not seeing it doesn't mean it isn't going on there. Like they say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're not being followed.
No, exactly. And we are speculating. I know a lot of evidence of this comes from things like remote viewing.
Yes,
I have.
I'd like to do that one day in some way if we could.
I would like to experiment with it. And I'm going to do a CE5 experiment soon in the next few weeks. I'm really looking forward to. But I struggle with that. I can't personally class that as evidence. It's interesting, and it might be true, but it also could just be imaginings. It just could. even though a lot of people that really support remote viewing say there is a lot of evidence. I did a video a few months ago with a guy called Nomad. I've just got his name wrong. Anyway, I'll put it on our group later. If you are watching, by the way, join our Facebook group on Mystery Machine. Put a link in the description, Dave.
Absolutely. Can I just, I do want to announce this while I've got it. Everybody pay attention to Jamie. Do exactly what he just said, please.
Exactly. Please join our group. We need to grow it and share the group where you can as well, because we really do need to grow it. It's a really brilliant community, and you can basically go in there and say anything as long as it doesn't get us kicked off Facebook. So keep it within those realms. But let's see what the bloody hell was I talking about.
There we go. That's out there in the side chat now. So please,
thank you. Please. But no, seriously, what was I talking about before I got distracted by the Facebook channel?
You joined it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Can anybody tell us what we were talking about? Great. You can just stick it in the side chat.
I had a really good point, and it was I've lost it. So sorry, someone else can talk for a bit. I'm just going to sit over here and moan.
No worries at all.
Point that
I think that gives us an excuse.
Just going back to, sorry, Dave. Mate, go on.
No, mate. No.
About aliens at war with mankind is the STS footage.
I must be a bit.
I knew you was going to go there with this one. The missile.
Yeah. Does that prove anything that it's trying to intercept or keep away
the ice behaves weirdly in space? Does it prove that?
No, I don't think that's.
No, I don't. I've done a video on it as well, mate, and I don't think. But that's the argument.
A really convenient way of explaining it away, isn't it? Do you remember not long ago? I know this is segueing again, but just mentioning the ice is when there was that. Was it a SpaceX launch where they thought they had a rat on one of the launches? Yeah. Do you remember seeing that?
Oh yeah.
Like, no, it's ice. And it's like, yeah, I'm wearing that size because I don't think we've got some kind of weird space rat. Unless it's some kind of throwback from Blake 7 or Doctor Who or something like that.
Do you sort of Blake 7?
I love Blake 7 as it happens. I'm a massive fan.
It's really good, yeah.
What do you guys think about the tether incident, though, really briefly? Aliens that are 30 mile wide or ice?
It could be possible that they've got ships that big, but I don't know. It's because there's so many...
Mate, it's fucking ice.
Shaped sort of things around it, isn't there?
It's ice and debris, mate. There's nothing.
I want to fly in. I want to fly into this and really stir the pot. I'm only joking. I don't see any reason why there couldn't be a 30 mile, big, huge alien mothership at all. There's no reason why they couldn't be. They're not bound by aerodynamics in any way, shape, or form. It could be huge. It could be in the shape of a giant cabbage. It doesn't matter. 30 miles, 50, 100 miles. It can be huge. Do we think that is a 30-mile alien mothership? However, no. I think it's debris in space. Is what I think is being caught.
People get confused with those because they don't realise that the shuttle is actually really quite magnetic and actually drags a big cloud of ice around it. Just going around. Actually
has its own thingy as well, doesn't it? What's it called? Gravity. It has a small amount of gravity that generates too.
But it's just basically through a static charge as well. It just drags a lot of this stuff around with it. So when the cameras look, but they were saying like, oh, there's the tether, and the object goes pulsing behind it, and it must be huge. Because no, it's much, much closer. But that tether is so bright, it sort of obscures the image, so it looks like it's really far away, but in fact it's really, really close. It's just ice. It's nothing. But the other STS which you're talking about, where they do fire some sort of rail gun at a UFO, which they do describe as being ice.
Yeah.
The flash that you see, they say, is a thruster.
Yeah, but you don't see any movement laterally, horizontally, or in any way, shape, or form of it. You can, and even the argument that the camera's on a gimbal, which compensates for the movement of the shuttle. I'm not wearing that. You don't see anything at all. You see a flash of light. You see what looks like a UFO coming into the atmosphere. You see it suddenly about face and zip off and accelerate at a phenomenal rate, and then you see what looks like a missile fly right through the flight path where it once was. That's what it looks like.
I don't believe it would be a missile. I believe it's some sort of plasma weapon. It's too fast for a missile. But
I don't mean a missile in the conventional sense. A missile is anything ballistic that can travel through the air, technically speaking, isn't it?
Hypersonic and so on and so on. Yeah, some sort of ballistic thing.
I'm not sure that ice explains that one. I'm not trying to say that it's like a.
No, I don't think so.
Did you say that it looked like it might have come from somewhere in Australia? That shot, if you call it a shot.
That's what they're saying. Yeah.
Somewhere in Australia.
Yeah.
That's bollocks as well. Sorry. There's. I read an argument with a guy who says it was fired.
Don't hold back, Jamie, will you?
Well, it's the name of the base. I forget the name of the base. It's an American spy facility, basically. It's just outside quite
the Americans have spy facilities, really?
Yeah.
In other countries?
Jointly operated with the Australians on this one. But they've said, what's it pigging called? Had a really long argument with a guy about it. It's just outside of a town. It's about 12 miles from a town of 10,000 people. So if you're going to have like a weapons station, there's better places to build it. There's better places to build it in Australia. You just wouldn't build it there. I would say this place is more likely to be like the targeting place, but also it's a spy. It's a spy station spying on the Chinese. That's all it is. It's an unusual place, but it's not a weapons platform. So it could have been launched from somewhere in Australia, just not the base people keep.
Not the base they're claiming. Yeah. More likely to be an underground, unknown silo out in the middle of nowhere, if it's anything. Yeah.
Far more likely, yeah.
I will quickly throw that in, actually, Shire, seeing as how you've put it out there. I don't want to go too far off topic, but are the pyramids in Antarctica, Dave, and panel showing results habitation. Now, Jamie's your guy for that, I would say, and maybe Steve. I'll highlight that before we crack on with what we think, guys.
I think very possibly. I'm not sure about the pyramid because it could just as easily be natural. But there are other structures and things in Antarctica. If you can sift out all the fake nonsense images that keep getting bandied around, there are some really quite interesting structures. And it is also true that Antarctica, where's it gone? Antarctica was possibly green and lush about 50,000 years ago or even more recently. I could completely believe that something lived in Antarctica recently. And the Nazis believed it. They expected several missions down there and potentially sent subs down there. We've sent several missions down to Antarctica, Ohio. I see him, and I might no. But how did that little twerk get so many people to do that? It's unbelievable.
He used to take acting classes and things like that to captivate the audience when he was doing his speeches. He would examine and watch lots of actors and all the gestures, all the gesticulation. There's a word for you guys in the side chat. You can use it if you want. Gesticulation, and it doesn't involve two meaty danglers.
All he does is he was brilliant at all he does is strongly agree and disagree with things with your hand as you're talking.
That's all it was. When he captivated people.
A lot of that.
Charlie Chaplin moustache.
Yeah. I'm not massively convinced by the pyramid structure because, like I said, mountains are kind of that shape sometimes. But could something have lived down there? Most definitely. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, if I was an alien species living on Earth, that's where I'd go.
That's what says it was called Pine Gap.
Pine Gap. Thank you, Bazza.
Pine Gap.
That would have annoyed me. There is a small village called Pine Gap, a small town, but then it's actually, I want to say Palm Springs, but I got it wrong before. Something Springs, there's a town, and it's literally 12 miles away, and there's a population of about 10,000. So if it is where it is, it's an odd place to build it, but it's definitely a spy facility anyway.
Okay, so given we're doing the Dulce base alien battle thing, we've had a little bit of a chat about it. And when we do these things, we're not claiming that these are any kind of in-depth investigations. We do see comments in the chat that are sort of like as if people are saying, well, you've forgotten about this and you've forgotten about that. It's not really what we're doing. If we were doing that, we'd probably be doing 24-hour live streams, and then we wouldn't have covered it. We're generalizing over topics that we find interesting and that are mysterious, hence the name. So what do we? It's really about what we think as a group, and we don't always think the same. However, I get the kind of vibe on this one that we might be like-minded. So what do we think? What do we think, guys? Jamie, do you want to go first?
It's bullshit. Right. I have several problems with Mr. Philip Schneider. The way he speaks, he definitely has political motivations, it seems to me.
Yeah,
he uses words like militia a lot, which makes me immediately nervous. He exaggerates numbers quite a lot. He doesn't come up with detail about the incident, which I would have thought he would.
Yeah, like what Dave was saying earlier, it imprints on your mind.
Yeah.
You remember things. You remember.
Yeah.
Been in a few situations myself over the years that are, a little bit surprising, and it doesn't ring true when he talks about it. He makes comments like kicking the parasites out and things like this when he's talking. That it just seems to me that he's got an agenda, but mainly the few things are this guy supposedly ended up being face to face with an alien and shot too. He also supposedly had a piece of metal from Roswell given to him when he was 12 years old.
Yes.
His dad was apparently best friends with an alien, Mr. Valiant Thor, who he got to meet. It just seems to me that this guy had an awful lot of alien experiences for one man. There are certain things he talks about which I actually think are possibly, almost certainly true, but I think he's heard them from other people. Like you said earlier, Dave, one of his very close friends was an editor in a UFO magazine or something. So it seems to me that he's took bits that he probably believes are true, and he's brought them together into an extraordinary story. Remembering that how do you say it now? Dulce? How do you say it?
We say it how we like, Jamie. You crack
Dulce.
on, brother.
Dulce. So this Dulce base, Dulce, something like that, whatever, was already in the public domain. People already knew about this from the other guys' accusations or thought or ideas. So, no, for me, people talk about him being one of the bravest whistleblowers. He talked about himself being the bravest whistleblower the world has ever seen,
which suggests a narcissist type element to his personality.
He talked about the FBI agent that he didn't know a week before then, that was putting his risk in his life for him and things like this. It does come across like that. I think he's taken lots of stories and he's putting them together into this dramatic story that I don't think ever happened.
That's fair enough.
Can't say anything like that. I should have just gone bullshit and left it at that. But
and just drop the mic and walk off stage, kind of thing. Steve?
I mean, listening to him speak, he sounds very much like he wants to overthrow the American government and not to vote and things like that, and that he needs these people out of the way to be able to sort of press forward with letting the world know about the aliens and things like that. It seems like his intentions are good in respect of trying to let the world know.
But they're not entirely benign, are they? There's an element of selfishness.
Yeah, very much so. And I think also he also comes across as though he has got some sort of mental health issues going on deep down as well. But no, if it did happen, it isn't going on still to this day. I wouldn't think. If it was, we'd all know about it. It would be, you know, we'd either be slaves or dead or you know, walking along next to ETs and things like that. But you know, where the base is or like where it's supposed to be, you have these sightings. You know, you got the Bigfoot sightings and things like that. That side of the sort of story pulls together with other areas of interest like that. But no, I just like Jamie was saying, I think because of the work and involvement that his father had in the military and the navy, getting pieces of other people's stories, putting them together and coming up, you know, 2 + 2 is 10 sort of thing, and that's what I think is sort of done there, because no one else really is sort of come up saying about the, you know, the battle and sort of things like that. And he would have more detail about the aliens. He wouldn't just I shot 2 aliens and because I felt threatened and that's it. You wouldn't do that. You would want to explain every single detail. If you was really wanting to get the truth out there and to get people to know about it, or I would anyway, would be like, you know, this is what they look like, this is what they sounded like, this is how they move, this is what happened when I shot him. Do you know what I mean? And there's none of that. So yeah, I don't.
Do you actually think the base even exists? Because John Lear, who seems to be mostly get credibility because his dad is famous.
I'm glad you've mentioned him, because I was going to actually say about like you were saying you wanted to talk about John Lear, so fly into that for a little bit, Jamie.
Well, apparently John Lear, a couple of years after this story came out, says he actually verified it from 4 different sources that this base actually did exist. But John Lear, to me, seems like a character that literally believe anything he's sold. If you've got some magic beans, go tell John Lear, because he might buy them off you. He believes there are mining colonies on the moon. He believes all sorts of things. Yeah, very possibly. Very probably, Amy. I love Amy's new that picture is quite new with all the.
I have noticed it. Yeah, I did notice it. Yeah.
Can I just really sorry? What Amy's just put there about blowing up the underground bases and causing earthquakes and things like that. In a lot of parts in America, there's been all these weird booms that have been heard throughout the years. Do you think that could have something to do with it as well? You know, trying to.
Very probably, and there's lots of underground bases that we know about that they're now trying to get rid of, that they might be doing quite secretly. Where they have their Titan missile systems.
I was just going to say that since the different salt treaties and arms limitations and stuff like that, they've been getting rid of silos and filling them in and all that kind of thing. So.
And just getting rid of all the stuff that they weren't supposed to have in the first place.
Pretty much, yeah, that's the top and bottom of it.
If ever you hear about like a satellite coming into orbit that the Americans are very coy about, it's because it probably got nuclear weapons on board that they weren't supposed to have.
Yeah.
I watched the film Space Cowboys with Clint Eastwood, and
which is fantastic.
It's a great movie, and it's all probably very true.
I'm going to write that down. I want to watch that.
Yeah, it's great fun.
John Lear.
But yeah, so John Lear apparently verified this from 4 different sources that this actually was happening. He's the one that came out with his 7 stories, part of the story. And he's a true believer. But like I said, John Lear seems to believe everything he's told.
Yeah.
And you know, he's one of these that believe the moon is hollow and everything else, which I don't personally. It's not personally a thing I can follow. So, but what do you guys from that point of view? Do you actually genuinely believe the Dulce base can even exist?
I will say this regarding the moon. If you do any kind of like constructional things with cheese, it doesn't hold its structural integrity, so there's no way that the moon is hollow. It just wouldn't be able to maintain its shape. It can't be made of cheese and be so perfectly spherical either. It just doesn't work like that, people. So John Lay is talking out of his behind. For me, I think you know, when you look at Thomas Costello, Thomas Costello seems to know a little bit more about the details than Schneider does, even though he doesn't claim to have been there at the actual battle itself per se. So for somebody who wasn't actually at the armed conflict, he knows more about it than the man who claims to have been involved in direct combat in the firefight with them. Although, albeit briefly, killed two of these. He killed two of these aliens. No more details. He got shot at by an electrical bolt, and he got attacked with some kind of plasma weapon. And that's all he really knows about it. I'm not entirely. I don't think just because we haven't been taken over by an alien race doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a conflict going on. I think we've been at war with powers. I want to be careful what I say, but I think we've been in conflict with powers or elements within our society alone for hundreds of years that even the masses aren't fully awake to yet. Although I think we're sort of going through an enlightening kind of process now where we are in world history. Now, I know that's not the same as an alien takeover bid, and I'm not trying to suggest it is, but the dumbing down of the masses is something that's an ongoing concern. And we were manipulated so very easily by the information that we're being fed, dependent upon the people who's feeding it to us. Is it likely that this battle took place going off what Phil Schneider says? No. I don't think there's a lot of credence behind his words. I don't really wear what he says. When you watch his mannerisms, and I try not to do it as somebody who studied psychology, but I mean, when you look at the way that he acts, the way that he interacts, and the words that he says, it doesn't suggest that he's being completely truthful, or even slightly truthful, really. I think the only thing he's telling the truth about is when he introduces himself, and that's it. You can forget the next hour and 3/4, but that's just my interpretation of it. I don't think there was an underground battle at this particular base. That's not to say that I'm totally against the idea that there are underground bases that might have things going on we're unaware of, but I don't believe that this took place. No, I'm not aware. There's just too many things that fly in the face of it, isn't there? You know?
I actually think he probably believes a lot of these things did happen. He just didn't witness it. He talked about Nemesis coming. That's 2052, which is to do with Nibiru and the end of days and things. It is a giant button. We all know that. The Americans watching will have no idea about Button Moon, but that was our childhood. That was. We're off to Button Moon. Follow Mr. Spoon.
I remember it very well.
Button Moon, Button Moon,
okay.
Button Moon, Button Moon.
We've got a couple of minutes. What do you think about that? Quick look at that. What's on the screen?
Hotspots seem to be around Indian reserves. Yeah, beliefs did. It's like we mentioned earlier, Paul, that actually there are a lot of Native American beliefs and their creation myths that come from that seem to have alien or some sort of alien links to the Sirius star system. You think the Dogu tribe in Africa as well, which seems to have very strong links to Sirius, and their creation myths again come from these visitations. They repeat it as history, though, not mythology.
Yeah. As they do the indigenous population or the native First Nationers. Being politically correct describing these people, I'm not sure there'll be any watching, but you know where I'm coming from. The First Nationers, it isn't even open for discussion about certain cryptids, as I've spoke about before. It doesn't even enter into any kind of discussion whether it's an absolute to them. It is history to them. It isn't conjecture. It isn't myth. It isn't folklore. It isn't legend. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and various other cryptids exist, and they are represented within the culture. And this happens the world over, not just in the Native American Indians, but in the indigenous populations of a lot of other places. Like I said before, the Melanesians for a start. And you've got it's seen in the Aztecs. It's also seen in in New Zealand, the Maori. That's it, yeah, the Maori. And of course, our lovely Antipodean friends, and I can't bring them to what are they called in Australia? In Australia, what they call them? Thank you. The Aborigines. Thank you, Jenny.
I got one. Come on. I remembered something.
We're all over it tonight, guys. It's happening.
That's not a knife.
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
It's a knife.
So, that's not a knife. So it's when you thank you, Bazza. Gone. You just one of them ones like when I needed it, and it wasn't there.
Nah.
So.
The point I was just making about Nemesis and the brown star and this hollow massive object that's going to hit us, that's traveling, going to come within 500 million miles. He talks about that like it's fact, like he knows it for certain. But that's a story that he's obviously been told by somebody else. I think, don't get me wrong, it might be true. But I think it just shows the way he speaks, that he talks about that being fact. Thank you, you even spelt it right. The same way that he talks about the agenda that the aliens have got. And the agenda is that they're going to take over. Around 2029, I think was the number he came out.
Yeah, 2029.
But again, he talks about that like it's absolute fact. How would
like
he know
it's
that?
a diary date. It's an arranged thing. Yeah.
He's obviously been told that by somebody else, but because his experience wouldn't suggest that he would know that from anything. It's not like he was down in the base and he was actually working with the other aliens for several years. He went down a hole and shot 2 of them and left. So how does he know the rest of his fact? It's because he's been told it by other researchers, potentially. But then he repeats that story like it's absolute fact.
Yeah.
That's my problem with a lot of the stories.
It's like what James Archive just put up. Yeah. That's what we were talking about before, James. About whether he's sort of mentally stable or not. And
I think he's a fantasist. I think he's got an agenda, but I think he's a fantasist.
Yeah.
There is an agenda there, though.
Just really quick. Sorry, guys. When he says that he was shot by that plasma beam and he was opened up like a fish, and he obviously has got that massive scar. Do we know that if he had any heart transplants or anything like that?
No, no, I don't mean no, we don't know. What I mean is, as far as I'm aware, and what research sort of says is that there was no major surgery conducted on. Certainly, what his wife is Cynthia, I believe his wife was called Cynthia. Was so that nothing like that was going on, apart from all the other ailments there, because he's got quite a bit of a list of ailments, really, isn't he? He was not. He wasn't a well puppy. Was our Phil? We're going to call him. We can call him Phil. You guys in the side chat, be a little bit more reverent, please.
Mr. Phil.
We can call him Phil. Mr. Phil to you. Oh no, be careful with that one. Mr. Phil. But,
one thing we haven't mentioned was his suicide. Sorry to interrupt you, Dave. Sorry, Dave.
No. Please go ahead.
It occurred to me. When I think something, I have to speak it, or apparently I forget, even when I'm halfway through saying it from earlier.
Absolutely, crack on, sir. Go for it.
We haven't actually mentioned his suicide, and a lot of people believe that was suspicious. I couldn't actually find out a great deal about his suicide, because I've seen about 3 different stories about how he died. He either hung himself, shot himself, or there was no.
Have you seen the photos?
Thing. I've seen a couple of different ones. So which ones have you seen, sorry?
The ones with his catheter.
That was the other one that did. Yeah, he
like a ligature around his neck,
wasn't it? Catheter, didn't he?
Yeah.
If I had to have a catheter, I'd probably kill myself, to be honest.
He was found with his face in his wheelchair seat as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And bits of blood all over, well, not all over, but around the floor and things like that.
Which still doesn't sort of like match up with the fact that he was strangled. I know that you can sort of argue that different elements of death by asphyxiation can be described as being strangled, but strangulation as a cause of death is usually quite a specific thing, really, isn't it? when it's on autopsy reports rather than suicide, so on and so forth. I'm not so sure about it. Yeah, it does. It's and the position of the catheter and the way that it's positioned around his neck, the way that he's done it. So he's managed to pull it tight to make himself become unconscious and ultimately die of asphyxiation, strangulation. And then he's like just decided to face plant the wheelchair, or did he decide to go into that position in the first place? And it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, would he have enough strength to do it himself though if he's this bad as well?
Well, you see, Amy's just made a point there that I was referring to before. He definitely does come across as a narcissist. And that element within somebody's psyche doesn't usually lend themselves towards being self-destructive. They tend to be more needlessly messianic, more than destructive in many ways. So
it depends on sort of narcissist, to be honest. Some narcissists come over because they are quite hateful. Basically, they have absolutely no self-esteem, no self-confidence, so they have to create these fantasies to support or to create a persona that gives themselves like
a perceived alter ego, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't
that sort of narcissist? It's a bit different, but yeah.
Wasn't the
when you hear him talk, he doesn't come across as that kind of narcissist. Sorry, Steve. He comes across as like there's definitely, to me, you do see elements what suggest he was massively delusional, and that what he get too deep for my little and don't worry about it, Bazza. We're making it all up as we go along, brother. It's all good stuff. But analysing the guy from videos is all we've got, really, isn't in the words and the things that he pretends to have seen or what he claims to have seen. But he does come across as a narcissist. Is he likely to have strangled himself if you go off the photos? If you look at the photo, just look at the photo, people. To me, it looks a little bit suspect. I mean, he's not completely out of it. But, you know, I'm one of them weirdos.
Questions.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied a little bit of criminology and sociology, and because of that, you've done various modules upon serial killers and suicides and stuff. And when you see these kind of post-mortem photos or death scene photos, I don't look at them all the time. I don't know, I've got a kind of weird fetish, but when you look at these kind of things, you can see why they reach the conclusions they do when they first arrive at the scene. This is before any kind of autopsy, and I'm talking about the initial elements that arrive at the scene to the report. But in this instance, you look at his picture and it does pose questions. I think I do have to concede that.
Yeah, it does. But also in the final autopsy report, I think that his wife got done or something, that it caused the death was a stroke. Was it a stroke? Yeah, stroke. So I don't know. Dave's right on them photos though.
You know what I mean, Steve. And if you look at them, it's really. I will highlight that one for you because we've got a minute or two there. We've actually gone over a little bit, but I'll do that, Amy, because you've gone as far as to put new glitter and stuff like that on your face.
I don't think we have we?
I think they've existed for all time.
God, yeah. Jill Dando was
killed because of it.
She was on the case, and you know, she went to the police, and the police sort of turned around to her and says, "Hey, you're full of crap, love. You don't know what you're talking about." And then a couple of weeks later, flipping point blank to the head. You know, professional hit. You know, she went to try and tell Cliff Richard about it, who was extremely good friends with. But again, I would think that he's in on it as well, because
I think it was sort of inferred that you know, any kind of like vacuous comments to be made against any kind of celebrities, and we're not doing that. However, it is known that he was. You know, it is known that he was inferred as well as other people. As far as I'm concerned, Amy, not only has it been going on, and this won't come as a surprise to you, know, certainly not to the two wonderfully delicious dudes I'm on screen with, but not only has it been going on for eons, It still goes on, and it will always go on because people allow it to. And these people are people that are in positions of power, trust, unfortunately, and respect, and they are looked up to by the. We look at these people through rose-tinted glasses, and unfortunately, the frames of those glasses are coated in shit, and we only see them when it's too late.
That's a good analogy.
It's this theory that when I was first told it, I immediately went, "That is utter bull. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." And then by the time, actually, it was Damien, my good colleague, who hasn't turned up, the little git, and he told me this theory. And it was that basically, if you're in a position of power, the people that are really in power, if you basically want to become prime minister, the people that are really in power that pick you, basically force you to make love to, well, he'd make love to a pig, didn't he? But a child or something like that, and they record it. And then they've got the ultimate control over you then, because you can never do anything. They basically, you will do whatever they say from then on, because or they'll say, well, we'll release the evidence about what you did. And I'm there going, that's stupid, don't talk rubbish. And then I'm thinking about it going, actually, that would really be the ultimate control mechanism over somebody if you were like putting them into power.
Dave's getting room service again.
Exactly, more broccoli. But that is the sort of thing that even
thank you, son.
Even
that's all right, Dad.
Yeah, but even the hint of something like that ruins careers. Never mind if they actually had evidence you'd done it.
Yeah.
You know, so or been forced to do it, whatever. But
I mean, look at Louis Theroux. He even got crap for doing that documentary with people going, "Oh, you're, Jimmy's best mate now," and blah 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 blah, and all that sort of stuff as well.
That shit sticks.
When you live in a society where serial killers that are known for murdering, massive amounts of females by rape and unbelievable violent ways, will still get fan mail in jail to the extent of where somebody will want to visit them and marry them.
Yes.
Then abhorrent behavior by other human beings doesn't necessarily put people out of a position of trust or respect or even admiration, unfortunately. And that's why we'll never be rid from this. I just think it's a cankerous growth on humanity and society, unfortunately. Bohemian Grove will become a topic one week, people, trust me.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Fascinating what the wealthy. I just think when people have all the money in the world and money isn't important anymore, what becomes important? I think power and cruelty.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I think we've covered that. We've wandered off topic a couple of times.
I think we've done it, but we appreciate the people inside interacting with us. So we'll throw one or two of them in. So the basic rundown of that is we don't really believe at least Schneider's story, and in an absolute and in an outside rounding off, we don't believe the battle actually took place. Is that a safe thing to say?
Yeah.
So it's up to you guys. What do you guys think? So it's a good big thanks from me, and I appreciate the guys joining me. What have we got next week? Can you give us any kind of information what we're doing next week?
Just double check with Steve. Do you want us to take it?
Yeah, please, guys, because I've not.
I know your life is against you at the moment, isn't it? I think particularly after what we had a discussion post video a couple of weeks ago on time travel, and to be honest, we had to cut it short because I need to go to bed. So next week we're going to be discussing time travel, and we're going to be discussing a few of the time traveler claims that have appeared, but also just the general idea of whether time travel is possible and what it might look like, and we'll just let our intellectual brains wander through, pretending we understand stuff about physics.
We need Matt Groening for that, don't we?
There you go. Basically. What more could you ask for? All you've got to do is tune into Mystery Machine for all the latest up-to-date weirdness. And next week, it's on A Brief History of Mystery with Jay and with Damien. The week after, I will be covering the biggest mystery of all, and that is why did Freddie Mercury never get told that his tash looked absolutely shite? So we'll be covering that. That'll be an in-depth one. It could take a few hours.
Because he was Freddie Mercury. Who's going to tell him anything?
Who can say anything to our Freddie? That's what you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Farouk. We appreciate the facial hair. So thanks to everybody for joining us.
I'm coming from the only one in the group.
I'm joking.
Himself.
Just absolutely trying to light the side chat up with absolute horror when you made that statement, Steve. I knew what you were trying to do. How do you not know who Freddie Mercury is? How dare you? It's the guy the only person who could make spandex look good. But I'm pretty sure it was socks. It was socks, people. It was socks. It was socks. So thanks for that. Tune in next week to A Brief History and Mystery. If you haven't already subscribed to the other guys' channels, do that. Occasionally they have decent content, not that much. Stick with me. But if you get the chance, you may as well give them a sub. Show them show them some love. And thanks for being here, guys. Truly appreciate it. You're all absolutely fantastic. So it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from
everybody. Oh, no, you can't do that.
That was great.
Yeah, it was if I'd have talked over him.
We appreciate you being here. So thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, guys. Cheers, everyone in chat. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.